just needs to be.
Automatically.
It's, I know.
I'm like,
It's so Keep that being good.
I'd like to call this Monday, August 10th, 2020 school board meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary at Large.
Mr. Arnold?
Present.
Mrs. Hannon? Present. Mrs. Redworthy? Present. Mrs. Spence? Present. I'm present. Mr. Coder?
Here.
And Mrs. Gilman?
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. We have next on the agenda, public comment. We have one comment card that has been submitted. Ms. Claudia Williams.
Hi, Claudia Williams. I work at the Kessling campus site. I used to be able to say right there, and now I guess it's that way. I wanted to let you all know how much I appreciate our technology department. Not only do they have the knowledge to repair things, but they have the right attitude. Anytime I ask for something, software, and this includes all of Mike Whitetower's crew and also the technology coaches, they're right there to assist with an equipment problem or a software problem. So I really do think they are all hard workers. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, it consists of the approval of the minutes of the July 13th, 2020 school board meeting, the approval of the minutes of the July 27th, 2020 special school board meeting, financials for ratification and approval, August 10th, 2020, the treasurer's report, July 2020, the 2019 to 2020 extracurricular summary report, and personnel recommendations and travel requests. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? All right, so let's take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. On to reports. Superintendent's report, Mr. Francisconi.
Yes, thank you, President Gilliland. A few things I'd like to go over tonight. One is I'd like to talk about an update on the master plan for the property that we purchased on the corner of 18th Street and A Streets. So if you recall, back in early January, right after we purchased the property, we sent a letter to all property owners that had adjoining property to that property, which consists of, again, close to 35 acres. At the time, we committed that any sort of plans that we were to present or plan would be publicly discussed as far as any sorts of approval, zoning approvals, any and all of those things. Following up from that meeting, after having some conversations with some specific neighbors, wondering what the update was, we felt we just sent a second letter stating the same, that we are, other than to use the south side of that property, which is along the tree line, other than to use that for our agricultural farm field, which is what we used to do across the street till we built the track, other than to use it for that farming purposes for right now, we have no further plans that we presented in any formality to discuss and bring to you. Now, we're gonna continue with COVID, of course, everything get put on the back burner. But outside of our agriculture using about a third of that, we have another 2/3 of that property to discuss, which we will be following up with you after we have a facility study. We have the study going on right now. It's gonna give us some recommendations about things that we need to address. And then if in fact something were to come out of that study that we would think would be something that would be necessary or something that we would like to put in on that property, we would certainly present that to you in a public setting, and as well have any individual zoning, if that were to be approved, any zoning or any sorts of details would be held not only publicly, but we'd have separate zoning meetings prior to the zoning meetings like we did when we built Hanley. We'd send all the neighbors something, let them have access to our architects, and then we would have a meeting with them, then have a zoning meeting so they know what we were going to ask for zoning changes on. But all that is down the road at this point, and that was the point of the letter, just to make sure people they're not missing anything as far as our planning goes, other than we decided that we're gonna use part of that for the farm field. And again, they should be receiving those letters this week. And then in the letter stated clearly that we were not planning to do anything until very likely late in 2020 or early in 21. But again, that would be publicly done. So I'm going to update you on that as well. Welcome to the new ESC. It is the ESC. It's the Educational Services Center. It's expanded its services, of course, because not only in addition to the boardroom here, but our special needs programming that's on the other side of the building and on both first and second floor. And then as well, we have resource offices for virtual learning, for parent resources. We have both the business side of which used to be at the ESC, as well as the administrative side. A number of other plans in the future as we continue to grow programming as things continue to change with COVID. So this is our first meeting in this setting, and we're still working some bugs out. Thus, we have some cords and things, but for now, it was nice to get the first one off the floor here for us, and in the future, we'll have some, like I said, some other capabilities to where we can, we won't have to have so many wires, but I do see the videos and the screens playing a large part in the future meetings. And again, the old ESC as it was is still it will end up being something that comes out of facility studies as a recommendation for the use of that building. But for right now, it's sitting idle, but we have no plans to raise it in any way. We think that there's enough bones to that building that we can use it for our purposes. And so we have the new address is 1000 Harrison here. And obviously you come in the main front entrance just like you would if you were going to school, many of you would have gone to school here. You just like going back to school. So yeah, we're excited to be here, and we're excited to have the new setting, but as well, we're most excited about the programming that we're offering here. We feel like we're closer to kids, closer to parents with all of our services in one location. With all the things going on with COVID, again, just wanted to remind everyone that we've been on a progression of updates at these meetings regarding COVID, and mostly regarding the start of the school year. And so tonight, as a part of old business, I'll continue to work and add to what our initial 2 planning sessions were that are in our COVID return plan. But outside of that, just a reminder to everyone that we are slated to start on August the 20th, not October, that would be a new announcement. August 20 for teachers, and then August the 24th for students. That's solid. We'll talk a little bit more about what is going to come prior to that time, because there's a lot of burning questions that are out there, and I'll save that for the presentation tonight, which again is a follow-up from our previous 2. You're going to hear a lot more about the actual educational programming. You're going to see some updates that are on our website following our prior meetings, and we'll talk about the start of school and what we can expect regarding red, yellow, green. So I'll wait for that period to get into much more detail. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Franciscone. And now for for the elementary assistant superintendent's report. Mr. Tonigal.
All right, good evening, everyone. Most of the contributions and comments that I'm gonna make tonight will come in a little bit when we get to our back on track plan. Most of the work that's going on right now hits one of those school improvement categories of curriculum, professional development, parent and community engagement, but every part of that plan hits one of those areas. So our principals have been working very hard on that. I want to thank our parents for responding to our options requests. A big portion of our decisions that are coming up next rely upon good information back from them on which choice they choose, option 1, 2, or 3. So our principals are pulling the information and looking at our numbers to help us better make decisions on our next steps. So been working with our instructional coaches as well to support our teachers in each of those 3 options. And again, we're going to hit on some of these things here in a couple minutes when we get to the plan. That's it.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Tonigal. On to the secondary assistant superintendent report. Dr. Larson.
Thank you, President Gilliland. Just a few things at the secondary, as Mr. Tonigal said, working hard to get things going back to school. We are looking at doing some things for student orientation. The intermediate campus is looking at the week of August 18th, and we'll be putting some things out for that. And the high school used our PR students to create a walkthrough virtual video, so they put that out. And do want to recognize some students. Our VFW, the Women's Auxiliary, we had 8th grade students that were winners for the VFW Patriots Pin contest. So first place was Aiden Coleman, who won $100, and second place was Caitlin Frickus, who won $75, and third place was Riley McGill for $50. Congratulate those students and thank the Women Auxiliary and the VFW for making that opportunity for our students as well. So, and then also I think we'll be included a little bit later with the donations, but we were contacted by the Harold Argus office in Laporte, and they are merging with the News Dispatch, and so they made the decision that they wanted to donate some of their furniture to the school system. And so we were able to go over and look at that, and are going to be using some of that in our college and career lab at the high school in B11. So we want to thank them for thinking of us and for helping us to create a business type atmosphere in that space at the high school. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Larson. Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, President Gillen. Just to piggyback off a little bit of what Mr. Francesconi said as far as the new ESC is concerned, a lot of credit goes to our maintenance and custodial staff in getting the building ready. I noticed when you walked into the building how shiny and those floors have been waxed. They've taken really, really good care of the building. But as far as the renovation work is concerned, like Mr. Francesconi says, there's very, very few items as far as technology is concerned about this boardroom. And then there are a few very small punch list items that remain on this project, but overall, just really, really excited to be here. Like Mr. Francesconi said, special education has moved in. They're excited to be here. Preschool is moving into their classrooms. Special education offices are set up and ready to go. They've been having several meetings here. So it's a great use of the space. Again, excited to use this building to further our education for our students here at Laporte Community School Corporation. The other item, you can bring it up. Mrs. Crail. Is we had mentioned a few months ago in getting the approval to move forward with the Slicer Health Clinic. Now this is for our students. We had housed this in an adjoining office in our nurses station at Laporte High School, but through the gracious donation or grant or gifting, I should say, through the Healthcare Foundation to be able to fund this clinic. Very, very excited. I wish it was maybe 2 or 3 days The board meeting would have been away from today because this would all have been completed, but I wanted to give the board an idea of what is in this particular clinic. If you can see this first slide here, we are going to have a storefront. Storefronts, there's a lot of lead time with that, but it should be here before the beginning of school. But that new walkway there that leads directly into our clinic. And so within walking inside that clinic, there is the second picture you see to the right is a waiting room area that we'll be able to utilize for parents and students that are coming into the clinic, as well as the reception area there. You will see the square in which the receptionist will be there to intake before they're actually let into the clinic. And so they'll, much like a clinic that you would normally go to and do the intake, they'll be able to do that as well. Then inside the clinic itself, you will see that there is a physician's office to do any type of documentation that may need to be taking place or transcribing any type of notes. And then there is also exam room number 1 that does have a sink. It is plumbed. And then also exam room number 2. And then also there is a work area. We were fortunate enough in which to save money that there was casework currently in that classroom that we were able to use. It's really great shape that will be equipped obviously with locks because a number of supplies would be stored there. But again, our clinic is going to be set up and ready to go. In fact, they're going to start moving in next week, actually next Monday, the 17th is when they'll actually start moving into that clinic. So again, very, very excited about the Slicer Clinic. Last item this evening, it was part of our projects this summer, which actually concludes our intermediate school and Laporte Middle School, are the monument signs, and they are now complete. We are actually getting training tomorrow on how to program. Those are LED signs, and they're located on the north side of the property if you enter through the north, and also on the south side of the property for the south entrance. They add a lot, obviously, to the complex, to the Kessling campus. I'm very excited to have those done, but that's actually the very last thing to wrap up the middle school and intermediate project. So again, very excited about that. As Mr. Francesconi had mentioned, we have concluding, or in the process of concluding, our facility study. Very excited to have a lot of detailed information, and will direct us in the future as how we're going to spend capital dollars and a representative from Schmidt Associates will be here to present all of that information to you. The last thing I wanted to really kind of briefly explain to the board, there was a lot of activity towards the end of last week. There was a letter that was sent out, and it talked about the funding, or the ADM of virtual funding for our school corporations. It was sent to school leaders, and it created quite the stir and quite the buzz amongst the state. Just to kind of fill you in on this, this was really geared towards virtual charter schools. When virtual charter schools started, instead of giving them 100% of the ADM dollars that we as public schools would receive, it started off as 90% of the funding if they were educating students virtually, and that has now been actually decreased to 85%. So 15% less than what the public schools would be receiving for funding. The reason this caused quite the stir was the idea of instructing students virtually. And it was okay, the fact that there was an understanding that if we were offering in-person instruction as well as a virtual option, that the 100% of funding would be in place. But the thing that really concerned me quite a bit was if we had to go virtual, all virtual for one reason or another, or we had other school corporations among the state that started off that way, and the idea was they weren't giving an option for that virtual, and the concern was that there was going to be quite a bit of funding that would have not be available for school corporations if that was indeed the case, because that's within statute. I was basically kind of put to ease a little bit in some of the conversations that were had among some of the state leaders. One of them, our executive director for Indiana Association of School Business Officials, Denny Costerison, who I reached out to in my concerns and expressed my concerns of that reduction in funding. And then he, again, the leaders had come back and said that that was not the intent, that the intent was to still fund at 100%. So the reason I say that was just to, again, educate you as board members. If you hear some of that rumbling, just to kind of have an idea of what some of that discussion is about. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. All right, moving on to old business. Getting back on track, COVID update. Mr. Francisconi.
Thank you, President Gilman. What I'd like to do is provide what would ultimately be a third update since our initial one. And at this point, I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation to display details and/or some files that we have that I have set aside. But at this point, these things I wanted to update everyone on, you as well as the community here, since our last meeting as follow-ups. So the student registration, at the last meeting, we talked about choices, we talked about 3 options. We've added details to those 3 options, but outside of that, the students have signed up for one of those 3 options at this point. And as well, because none of this happens without a number of parts in place, we've had a discussion with our teachers union. We have other discussions planned for other unions to make sure that whatever programming we're able to provide works with, as much as possible, trying to meet the needs of those different units. And so we'll go through that a little bit as far as what we're trying to do with to bring the teachers up to speed. We also have website updates on our website daily. If you remember when we first started with the plan, we presented a plan and we talked about how it was going to need to be continue to be updated, and that because every day something new comes out, we have to have the freedom to be able to update those things within the plan. But then, just like tonight, there's going to be something added to the plan. It's going to be presented to you, especially if there are major things, major bits of information that you would need to know about. But outside of that, there'll continue to be a number of decisions that we have to make. We had the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Indiana was on CNN today, talking with the host about the exact same thing Mr. Hunt was talking about. The threat that if schools don't send their students back in person, that they'll only get 85%. Different information comes up each week. Last week, the information came out that the governor's ruling on face masks to be worn by all students was then backed up. He made further clarification and said, after we've already communicated to all our students to wear face masks, then he communicates that, well, if they are 3 feet apart and facing the same way, then they wouldn't have to wear their masks. Written into an executive order, following up from his initial executive order, which came as a surprise to all of us. Just a number of things, including changes in how we're dealing with tracking cases by going and looking at those who are exposed and using the Trace Contacting Center to help us do these things. These are details that weren't in place but now are, so we can safely say how we're going to go about doing those things. But early on, prime example, we were hearing that in the first guidance that came out from the state of Indiana, from the Department of Ed, was in an in-class document that many of us have seen, it's still on the website, it said that if you get a case in a school, you can expect to be closed for 2 to 5 days for contact tracing and as well for disinfecting. The most recent communication came out from the Health Department of Indiana State Department of Health, says that we're going to address the individuals, we're going to contact trace, we're going to quarantine those individuals most immediate that are exposed, which is a defined term. We talked about this the last time. And that's how we're going to address these things. You won't close any buildings 100% just because there are cases, but it's a lot of work and a lot of detail and a lot of trust that goes on with all these contacts and the tracing that has to go on, and the trust that if someone gets a letter from the health department that says they have to be quarantined, that they actually are quarantining themselves, that they're not taking liberties with that, whether they're a student or a staff member. So these are all things we're preparing for, but we'll give you some updates on those things, again, with the documenting of the COVID cases, which is addressed here. And then we're
Mr.
talking
Francisconi?
about the start of school year, yes.
So with regards to that, so what role, whether, and I don't know if this has been defined, local health department play in determining what will happen if there is a case?
Okay, so there, I'll address that in detail in number 4,
Oh,
but
okay.
I can tell you off the top of our head that we just had a document, a 9-page document come from the Indiana State Department of Health. It talked about how to process and investigate and report positive cases. That document has been very, very helpful. We've used it to make our own internal documents that state that if we understand that there's a positive case of one of our students or a staff member, that we are to contact the local health department. We have that phone number and the name of the person in our internal document for all of our principals and anyone in charge of staff or students. And then secondly, once you contact them as a result of having, again, a positive case, this is key here, then whoever is most immediate supervisor, principal, department head, whoever, will have to work collectively with their assistant superintendent to do investigation regarding who would have been within 6 feet for 15 minutes around that person over the last 2 or 3 days, depending upon when the person was symptomatic or when they were first tested. So the records then become very important when you start looking at assigned seats for buses, when you start looking at assigned seats for classrooms, when you start talking to teachers about who was proximate for longer than 15 minutes, all these things. The investigation, actually, the details come from us. We're expected to have those in hand when we call the Contact Tracing Center. And the Contact Tracing Center then logs the case into the computer and then as well sends letters to anyone that's exposed. If you remember the last meeting, I believe there was a visual where they had one seat and then it had a bunch of people around it, and those students around it would have been exposed had they been in their seats for 15 minutes. The other students would not have been exposed unless they were maybe riding on a bus with that student or they were somewhere else for longer than 15 minutes. And this is where our challenge will come, is that people will rightfully be concerned, well, why didn't I get a call? Well, you didn't get a call or a letter, you should be thankful because your son or daughter was not considered to be exposed, and you don't have to quarantine. But on the other hand, they're gonna hear about it or they're gonna know about it, so we're gonna send letters, general letters, because we can't violate HIPAA rights or FERPA for that matter. We'll send a general letter to either that classroom or the entire school that states that we had a positive case, and then we have followed the procedures outlined in our plan in order to quarantine any individuals that may have been exposed, and that's the system we're going to go to. That won't make everybody happy. There'll still be people that will say, I don't care, I'm not sending my kid to school. We've gone through a number of these sorts of things. It'll be a rumor over the weekend, and the one thing I want to assure everybody is that we are not going to cut corners with regard to these investigations. We've already got a log of them, which I was going to talk about. These are cases in which didn't even end up being positive cases, but things that were reported to us back in early June, we foresaw this coming. So we can almost mention and document any case that even somebody thought they were exposed. Just recently with one of our athletes, we did have a positive case, and that called for us to actually use this contact tracing system that you just questioned about. So we're prepared for that. It's gonna occupy a lot of our time this year, but we need to do it. So then lastly, the start of school and COVID threat levels, we have some updated information we've been interested in, defining that, determining when exactly we will take a look at that and make a determination, how we're gonna make that determination. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We talked about student registration earlier. They had 3 options. This link is on our website. I'd like to go to that right now. It's a document that's going to show exactly what it is that the information that's been, we've continued to update and add to. It is on our website. I'm having a little bit of an issue trying to get access to that quickly, so I don't have it downloaded. I thought. Sorry. Document is on our website, and it talks in great detail, and we're not going to read to you tonight. Again, the purpose of this is to draw attention to the website, part of the point of going through this, and then as well to have that available for further follow-up by both our teachers and our students for that matter. But again, we talked about the 3 options on the previous communications that on our website, but this will go into more detail regarding each one of those options. So if you're following this, we talked about option 1, which is basically a standard option. You're coming back to school in person with, of course, all the plans that are in place to try to mitigate and respond and react to situations regarding COVID are certainly in place. And mode, you'd be going 5 days a week and with all those interventions in place, but then in the yellow mode, you would then change from 1 to 4 days in person, and then the remaining parts of the week would be e-learning or distance learning actually. And then lastly, if we would ever go to a red, back to the way we were in spring, it would be 100% e-learning for not only this group of students that chose option 1, but for all the options. And so likely the buildings will be closed once again like they were in the spring. But again, if we go to the website, we can pull this document up. It also talks about option 2. There's some schedules in there that people can expect. One of the things that we're working with the teachers on, and again, this doesn't happen when you work in isolation. We have to work together to try to say, you know, how is this going to look differently for next year, and what can you expect as far as taking e-learning as we had it before and basically strengthening it with the idea that you're now not just teaching electric techniques once a month or once every couple months, but you're now starting with the understanding that your classes are going to be totally online for 9 weeks to a semester. That's a whole different approach than simply coming up with some sort of a technological use of an assignment a couple days a year. Now we were better at it as we continued through the spring last year. In fact, we had some teachers that really just led the way, and we have a really talented instructional coach team who are working currently with us to put together professional development for the teachers. So with that, outside of option one, there is option two, which is that you would be in what we would call our distance learning academy. So you have someone that's option one in place as much as possible, depending upon the 3 phases. You have option two, which is a distance learning academy. That's our teachers teaching our students. Distance learning, 100% online. The period of 9 weeks is what we asked our elementary parents to commit to. And then period of a semester is what we asked our parents to commit to at the secondary, or at the high school level. And that's because to come in or do changes of either staff or programming at a 9 weeks for the high school would be problematic. It wouldn't be fluid. It would be very difficult to manage. It's already going to be difficult to manage it at 9 weeks in a semester, but we're working through that. We've had a good relationship with our association. They understand that education has changed and the things that we're doing right now and we're working on, although we don't have a lot of time to do them, these are going to be things that are not going to go away in some capacity. We're going to have more students that are a part of Laporte Community High School or Laporte Community Schools that are going to be choosing an online version. And the last version is specifically for students that we're calling our homeschool academy. I'd like to reach out for not only our own students, and this particular option is for 1 year, a 1 year commitment. So there's no opting out of it, and this was intended for those that were either had been previously homeschooling or thought about homeschooling in order to help them meet their needs as both the teachers in many cases at home, the guardians, that we could have some assistance for them, and then possibly some social activity for these students, not necessarily extracurriculars, but we have a building here where we could actually put on certain meetings for them. It'd be just different. It's a step better than simply them being at home with a homeschool online curriculum. But we're actually excited about getting this going, and we've had a pretty good response to this so far. Now I'm going to yield briefly to Ben and Jane about, you can talk about the numbers that we're kind of looking at, or a little more detail about the structure of the day. I kind of got into that a little bit, but it's not like we used to. Like e-learning, where you're only going to have access to, for 2 hours a day to the teacher. It's going to be more structured to it. It's going to be more like from this time to this time, this is what you're doing. And we believe that that is better for parents, it's better for students, and it's better for our teachers in a lot of ways, because they felt like they were on the clock 24 hours. Even though we said it was only a 2-hour window, the average high school student sleeps until 11 o'clock and then gets up in the afternoon maybe, or maybe late at night they're doing homework at midnight and then they send it to their teacher. So it was really, it's going to change for the better, and I think it's going to definitely be something that's more meaningful as well. But go ahead with that, Ben, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we hosted a Q&A session a week or so ago for Ed Options on the Homeschool Academy, and that helped parents. There were about 55, I believe, that attended that virtually. That helped parents kind of understand how that works, and so we thought, we need to really talk about what this Distance Academy schedule, that's option 2, what that looks like, because as Mr. Francisconi said, our teachers and students did a great job in the spring, but we can't be content with where we were at. We need to evolve, we need to improve, we need to build upon that, and so we feel from feedback in the spring from surveys, we also had a survey go out this summer with technology, that there needs to be more continuity, more structure, more predictability, more coherence for parents, for students, and for teachers, so that it's not this around-the-clock learning. We certainly want flexibility built into Distance Learning Academy, but structure and routines help people be successful, because parents have working lives and kids need to get their rest and all that sort of thing. So we've been working on a schedule for the Distance Learning Academy that parallels what students would be learning if they were in school. The delivery is different. The methods that, the instructional methods might be a little bit different, but it's very parallel. So at the elementary, we're looking at the key content areas of reading, language arts, writing, math. So we're gonna chunk the day out in those 3 areas because we're focusing on the essential content, and then build in times for breaks, build in times for small group work, build in times for special ed assistance, build in times for social emotional learnings, and chunk the day out like that. So the beauty of that is that if these students and parents choose to come back into in-person learning, option 1 at the 9 weeks or at the semester, there's again some continuity there, because the kids that are off campus learning remotely are going to have some of the same experiences. We can't replicate the day 100%, but we're trying in those key areas to give them the same experience. So the students would have a distance learning teacher. In addition to that, we want them to check in with their homeschool teacher once a week, once every 10 days, again, to promote that continuity with the hopes that someday they would come right back into the classroom and they would feel connected to their classmates, they'd feel connected to the curriculum, they would have an idea of what was going on in the classroom. So just running things parallel, trying to promote consistency and coherence is the idea behind this schedule.
The secondary, a little more, a few more steps to take just because of students' electives, especially at the high school. But the first step would be to look at the Distance Learning Academy, those core classes. And so again, as Mr. Tonigal said, building that schedule where the teachers would have a scheduled plan time in the morning, and then they would be doing their courses with students. Some students, it might be a pre-recorded, some it might be a live where they have to log in and watch a Zoom with them. And then there would be breaks between, and then in the afternoon looking at how we can include those electives. The other thing that we heard back from parents and from surveying from last spring was on the schedule for learning, but also communicating. So with the older students, we want to trust that they're doing their work, but parents also want the ability to be able to reach out to the teachers at all levels. And so we have looked at possibly flexing some of the plan time, office time for teachers to a couple of evenings a week, having a schedule like 5 to 6 o'clock instead of 2 to 3 o'clock, having that be a time when parents could possibly reach out to them as well. But it is a million puzzle pieces at the high school level because of the courses that are offered. And meeting with the teachers today, it's very encouraging that they're thinking through how they can teach differently and how they may have an in-person class one period and an online class another period. So my thought with that is, we've been focusing on what we can do for college and career readiness, and so we are fully in the midst of what a lot of our college students are going to be facing with in-person classes and online classes as well. With regard to the Homeschool Academy, again, those are students who either have been thinking about doing that or families that were thinking about doing that. We had a great conversation with the provider of the curriculum this past week. And just kind of a reminder on the structure that we put together. So we do have a director of online learning who is really the principal of the Distance Learning Academy, which is Jen Hunt. And then also Amy Jackson, who is helping us coordinate our VLA and our Homeschool Academy. So we have some individuals who are specifically working with the schools on scheduling. They're looking at the success that the students had in the spring. So, like Mr. Francis Coney said, we had some students that really do well with the online, even when it wasn't specifically structured, but some who did not do well. And so we've been able to pull the information from last spring as our students have chosen either to go back into the Distance Learning Academy or even to go to the Homeschool Academy to say, how can we help you be successful if you've chosen this and maybe you weren't as successful in the spring. But we really want to have all of you understand that the Distance Learning Academy will not be like the e-learning of March, April, and May. Again, our teachers were able to quickly transition into that, but we've had more time to plan and to be more intentional with the courses that we're offering students and how those will be delivered. We have an attendance plan, we have a grading plan, we have we have the pieces that will help us stay structured and, as Mr. Tonigal said, transition those students back into the traditional school. So,
I'd like to add too, we could possibly have a scenario where our in-person students are forced to go remote learning. And so we're trying to set up this structure, these schedules, so that there's continuity between each option. Because we're gonna have e-learning days that we know are planned where our teachers are doing professional development. So teachers aren't gonna be available in that moment to run live instruction, but we're also gonna have, most likely because we live in Northwest Indiana, unplanned e-learning days when the weather forces us to go e-learning, where teachers will be available live in that moment to deliver instruction. So you can see how within each option there are probably going to be different scenarios playing out. So a structured delivery schedule will help promote that continuity that the kids need for built-in routines and built-in predictability.
and I'll just add, with that comes our responsibility to help support all of our teachers through additional training, through patience, through support. And so again, our instructional coaches and our principals are already working to provide some professional development before the school year starts, and to really just help us work through doing those blended lessons. But our teachers are, anything that's changing and that's unknown, you can feel like you're on a little shaky ground, but I think when a team comes together, the ground. So we've got a lot of people that are working hard to really make sure that the kids in Laporte community schools are getting the best education possible. So I applaud them for that.
On the screen, some of the things that we're doing, again, once the students signed up, we also knew that we would want to get some options out there, these same options to our teachers. So we have preliminary numbers. We're looking at those and trying to match them up and looking at what our options will be as far as trying to meet the student needs and meet as many staff needs as possible, but as well as the students and staff have at least signed up for traditional in-person or online or distance learning. There's still a lot of questions. We met with the teachers today, realized that these things are going on, and as much as we have been able to communicate with our association, we have not had opportunities. Principals have not seen their staff members yet. These are all things that have to go on and will go on, and we understand that there are questions out there that people need answered. And so as we're going through all these things, we're trying to make all this as transparent as possible. We have a teacher VAC that's out there. These are good questions. How are we going to establish and enforce the mask rule? What are the parameters there? And I think that anybody that goes out in public and sees the number of adults that are not wearing our masks, you can expect what we're going to run into when we have their children in our class. And you can expect maybe what kind of support you're going to get from them when you call them up and say, look, your son or daughter's not wearing their mask, they've forgotten to put it for the time. And we're going to try to not to get to that point, but these are things that the teachers need to understand, that we're working with them and we're not trying to throw them out there. But we certainly have to be consistent with what we're doing. And our principals have done a good job within the main framework that we established in our plan, the first meeting that we had back in, I think it was early July, that the principals have taken and personalized that plan. And so they're working within the boundaries of that. So we'll be able to support them as we go. But it takes a lot of communication and a lot of planning and a lot of flexibility to make these things happen. And as well as we continue, we're going to have more and more guidance in place for staff, all of our staff for that matter, as we get closer. So some examples since our last two updates that we've had, every time we've had a presentation here, this being what I would consider our third major presentation, I will jump off the side for 1 second and say if you go to our website, which is at this link, and I'm going to do that right now, the history and the amount of communication and the amount of preoccupation that the community has had to have with this, that the school system had to have, is really unbelievable. If we go on our website and you go to this COVID-19 info, so COVID info, this is at the top of on our website. This is, it's like the state stopped updating their FAQ. You know what the DOE just said recently? Contact the health department. They've been trying to help us. They couldn't keep up with it. They got tired of things coming at the last minute. They didn't have any heads up on it. You can sense a little frustration there, but this has been a long road. I mean, take a look at where we've been. We started March 2nd, letter from the superintendent. That probably followed the afternoon announcement by the governor with no forewarning of where we're going. And again, I'll argue it's easy to close, but remember also, it started with we're closed for a couple weeks till further notice. Then we didn't know if that was the rest of the year or not. Then it became the rest of the year. And then it became that our schools were closed, couldn't even have anybody on campus. And then what's the question? This question starts up there, and look at all this all the way through March, these updates we're getting in April. You know, where are we going? How are we going to sign up? Are we going to go to school next year? So the real question becomes, since then, how are we going to start? And we're all still not 100% on how we're going to start, whether will it ever be safe or not. And all we can do is try to plan and prepare the best way for as many options for people, because again, there's a curve, a large curve between where some people are and where others are regarding when we will be ready. When will it be ready? When there's a vaccine that comes out? Are you first in line for that vaccine? When we first started talking about when this first happened? Are there enough tests available? Now there's enough tests. We're not talking about that. There's something that'll be a vaccine. And then does that vaccine work or not? Who knows? What happens when people don't want to take a vaccine? You know, there's no answers. We have to think through things, study them, and do the best we can, because human nature is never going to you can see it on TV everywhere, you're never going to have 100% of the people agree as to when the date is to return, when everyone is safe. What you have to do is make educated decisions as individuals, including us, to try to provide avenues that allow people to make those. And they're not easily done, but we're getting there. I'm going to go back here to the main webpage. So the most recent information as follow-ups from our last meeting, if you scroll down here, we had a July 13th meeting in which that was a special board meeting, and we posted the entire meeting and what we had gone over on that. And as well, we had a July 27th meeting. So the July 13th meeting, we mentioned all these documents. It was in a form of a PDF, and it was hard to scroll through, but it was there, and it was posted. But within less than a week, our technology people that Claudia's talking about helped us get direct links onto every one of these documents. And so We committed to updating the documents and putting more details in place, so if you wanted to see what one of our schools' plans look like, let's just go to Hanley. And you click on that link, and that's uploaded directly from their site now, so there's no lag between them telling us it's updated. And they're working on these regularly. Again, with the details in mind that parents want to know when they walk in the morning, what's it look like? How are they going to, which door are they going in? What are you going to do at lunch? What are you going to do at passing? What can you do? Some places can do more than others. We're going to do even more when we know exactly how many students are going online, because you're taking what could be as many as a third of your students out of the loop, at least for 9 weeks or a semester. And so we want to encourage people to continue to look towards the site for updates and many of the things that we're talking about, including a parent frequently asked questions. So again, we had a number of people that either emailed us, called us, posted something on Facebook or somewhere on our page that said they had these questions. And so we've taken them and said, you know, instead of answering everybody's questions, there could be thousands and thousands of questions. Instead of answering it just for one person, thank you for letting us know that, or asking us that. We'll put that out for everybody, because there may be other people. And so that's how we get a document here that's, you know, roughly 9 pages. And then Dr. Larson and Mr. Tonigal did a good job of trying to categorize the questions. And what are the questions you have about the programming specifically? And then, of course, safety is a whole other thing. But you can see as we go through this that right up until I think it was probably updated 2 or 3 days ago, and we still continue to update it weekly. Number of questions about how can I change my mind about do I have to wait for the 9 weeks, or can I change sooner than that? So we're answering a number of those things, and regarding parents, and certainly about the options that are out there. But we feel really good about that, and that's on our website, and that people can look to those things. But again, just want to encourage people to continue to look here. There are some things that are static that haven't changed. Things like the fact that there's a county-free testing, at least, that's on there. That has not been updated because it hasn't been updated, although we can tell you that if it is continuing, it's not for long before it moves from its location at the Civic right now. We'll be hearing about that soon, I'm sure. But again, a number of things on there and resources for parents. One of the things that we talked about with our technology department today, but they have their own plan. But outside of that, they have been continually upgrading both our software and our hardware and connectivity for the corporation since last year. And so we're really excited about this year, and the hotspots and the portable hotspots that we're going to be able to offer, as well as we're exploring getting our teachers, at least the ones that might be teaching from home, getting them an updated laptop that has a camera right on it and works better than the Chromebook actually does. So again, just want to encourage everybody to look towards our website after tonight's meeting, because some of the information is new that we're presenting tonight. We'll go back onto the website and we'll put this information on there, including streaming of the board meeting again, so that people can watch that and also refer to these documents rather than just try to follow them during my discussion right now. But with that, after having looked at the website, we talked earlier about documenting COVID cases, and I really did address quite a bit on that. But here's what I can do at this point is I will review this internal document, which is basically a mirror of the 9-page document from the Indiana State Department of Health. And what we're saying here is that we're directing and coaching all of our supervisors how to follow this, so that we don't have any slips, nothing falls between the cracks. But the bottom line is, when they get any report, whether it's a real positive case, or someone thinks they were exposed, or whatever it is, because a number of them are, they think they were exposed but they're not sure, what do I do? We're documenting all those, because we never know how they're going to end up, first of all, and second of all, we want to advise people correctly. So That's how it gets started, is someone hears it, hopefully not on Facebook, hopefully someone calls us. But we have found that the health department does not call us. The testing centers do not call us. It's an individual that received a test that tells us. And that's mostly how we find out. So there's a little bit of a flaw there, in my opinion. But nonetheless, as soon as we know that we have a positive case, now remember this is where there's going to be rumor all year. Someone's going to say they think they were exposed and they told the school today. If it's not a positive case that we know about, then it's likely no one is going to have the information that we're investigating just to document to make sure that it wasn't a case. We're not going to communicate on those. We had a complaint today, but it didn't turn out to be anything. No. And in fact, in most cases, we're encouraging staff not to violate any student rights or certainly any of our directors or principals for employee purposes. So only those that are going to turn out to be positive cases or someone that's exposed are going to end up having reports for them. Not cases where there were 3 people down the line and it wasn't a direct contact. Are you with me? You have people that are directly exposed and then indirectly. So that document does a really good job. But if you're a parent and you had if anyone is living in a residence where there's a positive case, you're going to be quarantined. Because you live there with them, because you're exposed. You could have a positive test. You might not have a positive test. We've seen some of those. They're living right with the same person that's got COVID tested positive. Some of those tests are people that are symptomatic. Some of them are not. There's a number of factors here, but it is normally the health department or the contact tracing center that directs those people as to how long they have to quarantine and what that means. So a whole different thing comes into place when we do have a positive result and that we contact the health department, and then we have specific numbers for our staff that talks about the contact that they will make with the tracing center. I have the number right here for them. And as I said, we have a spreadsheet right now in which there's probably 10 or 12 entries dating back from early June. And to our knowledge right now, we have one staff member that's a shared staff with another district that was positive a few weeks ago, and we've also had one student that was positive. Other than that, we've had staff members living with someone that was positive. We've had people exposed to someone that was positive. But that's the extent of where we're at, and we have that information documented in the event, and it will happen that there becomes a question as to whether we're being diligent about that or not. Let's look at the next main topic here. Kind of went through that already. Start of the school year. This is a $10 million question. Everybody wants to know, how are we going to start? So just to recap on where we were at the last meeting, we did talk about, and we put it on a delay for the start of the school. Just wanted to reiterate that. Nothing's changing with that. We're still sticking with that. We think that was a good move. We witnessed a number of schools that ended up doing the same thing. But again, every day is something different, and so we feel like that it's important for us to be able to say exactly at what point we're going to make a decision regarding the students coming back. How many days a week is it green, yellow, red? So we're setting up for that here. Again, August 20th is the teachers, not October. August 24th for students. And again, we've been monitoring COVID data. We've been talking with, participating in county health meetings, statewide health meetings, seminars across the board. And there are a number of corporations and health departments across the state that have been working together. If you've watched the news recently, a number of health departments came out of nowhere and surprised some schools about what they were suggesting, and then they caught feedback negative from that and then changed their minds on some things. It's really been a circus in a lot of places. I will give our health department credit. Mr. Kaminsky's helped us with this as we've participated in conversations with them. We've expressed that if there's something that's gonna come out, then we would not encourage it comes out like at the last minute. And then if it's something that just comes out, we would like to be involved with what that would look like. We have had conversations with them. We believe that across the county and many of the schools within the county are going to end up adopting the similar red, yellow, green, and as well as similar metrics for how it is that we're going to move from one phase to the other. But with that, again, given that information that we've had, we have a graphic that we are presenting. It's an updated red, yellow, green version. It's going to have 3 different ranges of positivity cases. That's the term. It's been generally accepted. It's on the main website for the health department again, for the state health department. And what I'm going to do is show this at this point. And work off of this to discuss where we're at. So you've seen the red, yellow, green. You have seen before the low to little spread is green, middle moderate is yellow. I'm not going to read to you. This is where we have improved upon this. And these numbers, these percentages are found similarly in the Indiana State Health Department website. In fact, their COVID data spreadsheet for the county, for each county, including Laporte, shows these similar percentage ranges. So with that, 5% or lower average of positivity over a 14-day period. On the website, we'll see it in a few minutes, they go by 7 days. They take an average of 7 days. It's 4.1 today, it's 4.2 tomorrow, it's 4.3 the next day. 7 days of that, average them, that's what the 7-day average is. We're going 14, which is not, at least it's in segments of 7, but we also we can't change every day, and really, it's hard to see trends over just simply 7 days. So it's not uncommon, and many schools are looking at a 14-day period in which we would look at that. And if that positivity percentage was 5%, in the 5s or lower, then we would be in the green. If it's somewhere from 6 to 15, it's going to result in the yellow. When we go to the main website for the Department of Health, you're going to see that they have combined the yellow and made one orange and another yellow, so they have like 2 segments within the middle of either red or green. We've simply put these together, which is similar to what some of our colleagues have done, including Michigan City, to look at the 6 to 15 range. Because remember that as well, within the 6 to 15, this is you're either in school or you're out. When you're in the yellow, there's a range, and that number could vary of how many days per week according to how close we are with this positivity rate. So if you had a 7 positivity rate, it's enough to put you in the yellow, but it might not be enough to make you only go 1 day a week. Maybe you go 3 days a week in that setting. But then as it would start to ramp up, you probably could cut back. There's some flexibility here. There's no flexibility here. This number 16 is pretty consistent across the board, whether they had 2 sections in here in the middle or not. 16 or higher was calling for red, which means, again, 100% virtual at that point. So, and again, when we talk about these colors, I think it's important to know, and I said it earlier, these colors only matter to somebody that's in person. Well, it's teaching in person, working in person, or attending in person. Because if you're yellow, if you're in a distance learning academy, it doesn't matter. If we're all red, if it's red, we're all red, and we're all e-learning or distance learning. So hopefully make that clear here. I think also the next question is going to be, well, when are you going to do this, and how is it that you're going to do it, and how do you know which dates? And so what we did was we said, look, we want to get through the first 9-week period. We're learning every day anyways. Most of our programming is set to, could change at 9 weeks, some of it. And so with that, we're going to look at these dates on here as dates throughout the first 9 weeks to check the 14 days. But if you look at the very bottom here, and it'll be a little clearer later, that we want to make, let's see, can I? We want to make the decision on August 17th. And at that time, we'll have looked at the 14-day positivity average for days leading up to August 17th, and we'll make a determination as to how we're going to start the school year. It's still a week and a half away, which could change a little bit, but we also don't want to, we want to give our parents as much time as possible, and we don't want to say now and end up having to change it in some way. So it's just, we talked to our teachers today that, you know, this is going to be one of those years where there's no cookie cutter. We're going to have to be flexible, and there's going to be things that we don't know or aren't 100%, or that we can't guarantee. We're going to take it one step at a time. So this is where we're at. By August 17th, we'd like to make that, we will make that decision. And again, as a part of our ongoing updates of the planning, that would be something that we would make public. I would certainly inform you of where we are with that. And then these dates would be dates in which we would look at 14-day periods throughout the first 9 weeks. So if we start on the 20th for teachers, then we would go back to that 19th and then go all the way through September 2nd. We're going to see here in a minute, not to confuse things, but what happens with this data is, like for today, we'll take a look, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So the website is right here, coronavirus.gov. We're going to look at that in a minute, but as of 1 p.m. today, looking at the last 14 days of data, from 7/25 to 8/7. Now, why didn't I count today, yesterday? Because the numbers were high and I didn't want to put them in there? No, they don't exist. And here's what we found, is that the last 2 days are not in there. And even the last couple days before that, days 3, 4 backwards, could be changing every day. So I wrote as of 1 o'clock today, or did I write that? Yeah, 1 p.m. Because you could go on there right now, and 2 days ago might have changed because they finally got a test result in and they tied it to one of those days. Usually if you go back 5 days, those days are pretty constant. But the days previous to that or following that could change. And again, we don't want to change, we're not playing games here. I just want people to understand that when they go back and they figure the math here.
Mark, the one thing I would add to that
Yes.
too is typically that there's a lag in lab processing time over the weekend, so you tend to see a spike usually on Wednesdays because tests from the weekend and the processing time and turnaround time from the lab. So it seems like Wednesdays you see a spike and people tend to get pretty worked up about that, but it's really just the lab catching up on some of those processes from any testing that
Sure.
occurred over the weekend. So that's something to keep in mind too, and I think it's helpful that you put the timestamp on there, because it does change pretty rapidly.
And so what we're gonna do is I'll have to clarify for you once we get started. The 17th is gonna stand. So if we decide on the 17th, I'm not gonna have data from the 16th or the 15th there. It's not gonna be on the data. So I'll have to go back to make that determination. That's not listed as to which days I'm gonna be looking at there. But it will be 14 days of data that we have prior to. So we're actually in that window right now. Believe it or not.
And so just to be clear, so that determination that's made on the 17th, with the information, best information you have available at the time, then will hold true for that entire 14 days going forward, so it's a retrospective look, is that correct?
Yes.
So then, from the 19th of August, or the 20th, when the teachers present through that September 2nd date, whatever number we hit and hold, that color that attributes to it will hold for those 14 days.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
That'll be the next change. So that we are at least holding some consistency, dealing with any peaks that might be there. You know, there's certainly mathematicians or people that can question some of these things, but out of all the data that we've seen, you know, this does not account for mortality rate, one's too many anyways. It doesn't address hospitalization rate, which has fallen off, but the minute you start getting into some of those, and none of them are exactly perfect, but it's an average of averages, so there's some problem with the math on that, but on the other hand too, it's not just a percentage that's not The percentage that's given is tied to per 100,000. So it's not a different percentage with different numbers. They're already factoring that in, that it's a percentage of something, so that you're not taking, one day you get 10 new COVID cases, and that is a 50% increase if you had 20 tested that day. That's pretty significant, right? But another day you only had 2 tests and 1 was positive, that's 50%. Those don't weigh the same. So it's problematic to average those if they weren't already connected to a percent per 100,000. So let's go to, we're on the website, this is where we're gonna go. We can have fun with this if you want. Go to Laporte County. And now, once you click on it, it'll tell you every county, but when you click on it, it gives you these specifics, the specific graphs. And what we're gonna end up doing is going to positivity, that's what we're looking at, percent positive. And this chart is color-coded with the state's numbers that I referenced earlier. Under 5%, they use blue. Why wouldn't you use green? I don't know, because most schools in Indiana have done that, but they didn't. They used red. Now, this is where it goes, again, 5 to 15. See this range in here? This is what I was talking about. They go yellow and, oh, what color is that? I'm colorblind, but anyways, it's orange maybe, right? So we just combine these two together. For the most part, it's pretty similar. And then I want to go over here because you have to be careful what you're looking at. These are positive cases by day. This is not positivity. So this is simply the number of cases. And this goes all the way back to April. This is the test by day. And you can see that the more people tested, the more people are going to be positive. Again, as well, this is the positivity test rate. And this is kind of tricky, but if you go on here, and it's really tedious, so I'm going to go on here, 8-8. It says 0 because they don't have data for 8-8, so you're back to your point that had been Saturday, right? So nothing for Saturday, so I didn't account for 8-8. I think I went back to 8-7. Let's go to 8-7, there you go, 4.6. So you go 4.6, and you go back and look at the next day. There's an 8.5, there's a 5.1, you get the picture here, right? 3.4 on 8.4, but you see, if you just looked at this every day, but we're still gonna have people say, did you see today, aren't you scared? We're gonna stick to the dates, and we're gonna watch the roller coaster, and that's pretty much the way it's gonna be. You can take a look and visually at how we started with this. In the numbers, they spiked at one point, and then they're starting to go a lot lower as far as the positivity rates. I think a lot of that has to do with they didn't have tests early on, and you didn't take a test unless you were symptomatic. So the numbers were really close. Number of positive tests, number of people tested, there was not a discrepancy. They fell in line. In fact, the death rate did the same thing for a while, and now both of those are starting to fall off. But I think that's the answer to this here. But again, you can see back here, this is May. Positivity rate of 9, and then we got, it started to go up a little bit in the middle of the summer, but at one point it was a lot lower. And now being where we're at here, again, we're going to take these last 14 days. That's how we're going to determine that. There's more information on this website, but again, people can peruse that, but that's where we're going to get the data. And again, I think it's important for people to remember that any time of day those numbers could be different. We'll state what time of day we're looking at it. And again, there's 2 days real close to the dates that we chose that we're going to have to, that we won't have data for, so we have to go back farther. And even those could be subject to some slight change. Key bit of information here is that we're going to make that determination on the 17th of this month. We'll announce it, we'll promote it, you'll know ahead of time. I will let you know what that is. We'll put it out on the website. Social media so that everybody knows. And we'll be working on our program within each one of those phases so that we're prepared for the start. Questions, thoughts?
Just going to comment, I think it's an incredibly thoughtful, measured approach to doing this. And I've been personally really impressed with the responsiveness to feedback, to data, to information. When emails come through from folks expressing their concerns, it seems as though we're looking into all of those various features of the plan. Of course, I think very early on, we knew that there is no perfect plan, there's no perfect option, nothing's going to be without risk, right? Us coming here today, all of us, there was a risk in us getting in the car driving here, so there's going to be a risk to this. But this seems like a really smart, well laid out, a way to approach it that still has a lot of flexibility to be able to, assess, the risk levels that are out there. And in looking at the plan, and I know we didn't go through all the, the various pages of it, but when I read through it, as a parent, I felt a lot better about that distance learning option than I did, a couple months ago. That I think it does look very good, and it does, kind of like you had mentioned, like it matches up with what these kids would have, when they're in school. So, and of course, in my mind, as parents choose the distance learning or potentially the academy, that reduces the number of kids that will be in person, making it easier to social distance in the buildings. So, I personally, I like this plan. I like the approach. I think it's very smartly done. Of course, as we've said, right, tomorrow it could all change. We just don't know. So, to the parents and staff members who want all the answers immediately right now for what it's going to look like from here on out, I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen, right? Because we don't know. And to the point about when will we be able to have, ensure there's no risk or safety, no idea, right? So that's why, in my opinion, it's been so important for us to have a really strong, flexible plan, because no one can say whether we'll be talking about this next fall or in 2025, right? We have no idea. Now, that's kind of scary to think about, but we don't know. I certainly didn't think we'd be talking about this in August, back in March. So I think what we've done here is to prepare for what could potentially be, a longer term, kind of engagement with, COVID-19 or other coronaviruses. So I've been very impressed with what you all put together, the committee, all the administrators, staff, everybody. So I think it's very well done.
I would echo Mark's sentiments on that. It's amazing the 3 options we've been able to give parents. Information about how their child will be supported through each of those avenues, I think, is just unprecedented from what I'm hearing from across the state. Being that I work outside of the community and I'm hearing what the other school systems are doing, the amount of support we're able to provide students and parents, regardless of what option they choose, is just, it's amazing. The flexibility and dexterity that you're talking about, Mark, I think is one that we should be incredibly proud of, because it gives parents the option to choose which delivery model works best for their students, because it's not all the same. And that's what I love, because I think so many school systems, it would have been easy to say, this is just what we're doing and take the one answer. But you all have been incredibly thoughtful about the needs of all of our students, while taking into account safety at every turn. So I really appreciate that. Because I don't think there is a wrong choice for parents, and we've made sure that we've considered every option possible, and to be able to support them through it. So I appreciate that.
I do want to say that none of this is possible where we are right now and where we're going to go yet is all depending upon our groups that we're working with, our teachers union, our administrators. They've all just picked this up, and we're working together. We had suggestions coming out of the Teachers Association meeting today that probably added some more options for us regarding some of the teachers that might teach some online and some in person. These guys are really nervous, and I don't blame them, because we're trying to make the numbers work. But we're prepared to do whatever we need to do, and we believe that it's good for the teachers and it's good for the students, of course, to have these options. And we'll do everything we can to try to place people where they want to be, instead of telling them that they have to be somewhere, because that's not good for anybody. So we have a good team of people, and our associations work well with us, and that makes it possible. But there's still a lot of sleepless nights.
I have a question about the mask issue, because you said everyone's supposed to wear it 100% of the time, but then if the governor's coming out and saying students don't have to at certain times, like, are you gonna make updates to that, or what's the approach on that issue?
It's already updated. It's in everybody's individual plans as far as what they're expected to do. There are mask breaks that some people are working into play. The younger students, in fact, they went so far as to say that K to 2 didn't even have to wear a mask. So we had to update that. We had to say, certainly if you want to, you can. We're trying to help teachers understand when it is that be clear as possible when they have to wear a mask and when they don't. So we'll find those in the classroom sections of each one of the different plans. We're trying to allow for some flexibility there, but if the students are, again, the language came out today that if the students are 3 feet apart and they're facing the same direction, technically they would not have to wear their mask according to the public health department. So we want to be careful that if teachers are superseding that, then we understand how and why, and the parents are prepared for that. Because what we don't want to do is have students scared from teachers that are scared, and going out of the boundaries that we've set to support, asking more of protection, and nobody moves, nobody goes to the bathroom, you're all wearing this no matter what, whether, you know, so we have to work some of those things out yet. But it'll be clear, it's in the plans right now, but we'll continue to update that. Yeah.
Mr. Franciscone, we also ordered a variety of different face coverings so that we could adapt to the younger kids. We are ordering some buffs that go around your neck that are a little easier to flip up and flip down. And I know Mr. Hunt, Mr. Shizeski have been looking at the face shields for bus drivers, for teachers that want to be able to sit and do whole group instruction from the front of the room. So I think taking that into account can help our students feel a little bit better too, and having more flexibility.
Anyone else?
That concludes my report.
Mr. Franciscone. Okay, moving on to new business. Consideration for the recommendation to approve the acceptance of donations, gifts, and bequests. Mr. Franciscone.
Again, always thankful to our community for stepping forward. Seems like the list gets longer and longer, when certainly during COVID, a lot of people out there, a lot of businesses looking to help us in addition to the grants that we get. But you had the list in front of you. Don't read through all of it, but I'd like to propose that you would approve of the list that's in front of us.
Okay, the recommendation, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? Second new business, consideration for the recommendation to approve adult meal price increase for 2020 to 2021 school year. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, President Gillen. Anytime that there is any type of charges that we offer to our public, our students or parents and such, we always come forth through the board in which to make sure that they approve those particular increases or those prices that are set for the upcoming school year. In this particular case here, this has to do with the calculation of provision 2, which then calculates out what type of reimbursement we are going to be receiving for free and reduced lunches. The rules that are in place is that the pricing for adults that come in to have those meals cannot be under the amount that we receive as far as reimbursements are concerned. So that provision 2 rate has been set at $2.20, and so therefore our breakfasts have been charged at $2.15 to the adults, so we have to increase that to be in line with the law. And so this evening, I ask that the board approve the increase for adult breakfast to $2.20.
Board has heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Consideration for the recommendation to approve LPCSC food service to pay online payment transaction fee. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you again, President Gillen. This evening, I'm asking that the board approve the idea or the concept of our food service picking up the service fee for our online payments. And the real big push to do this is, again, to minimize the transaction of cash during this time while we re-enter school. It cuts down on that contact. And so that's part of our plan for our food service as far as their safety plan is concerned with serving. And so that transaction fee is $2.60. And so from August the 15th of 2020 to December the 31st of 2020, we're asking that the board approve that our food service picks up that fee. And we calculated out based on last year, the amount of that would be $15,576 roughly. I ask that the board approve that this evening.
Board's heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you again.
Consideration for the recommendation to approve updated pricing for student Chromebook parts and repairs. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you again, President Gillen. Again, I come to the board this evening as far as some differential in pricing for the repairs of our Chromebook. We had brought some pricing to the board prior, but there is some updates as far as the Chromebooks are concerned. And so based upon that updates to the Chromebooks, there is some differences in pricing that we initially had presented to the board to approve. So this evening you have the information in front of you and the price list that Mr. Waltauer and his team have put together as far as repairs and parts are concerned. So this evening I ask that the board approve the prices as submitted.
Board has heard the recommendation from Mr. Hunt. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Consideration for the recommendation to approve bid authorization for the construction of the Laporte Community School Corporation Employee Health Clinic. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, President Gillen. Again, this would be the second clinic that we would have discussed this evening. Obviously, the student clinic, the Slicer Clinic, is getting towards the end of completion. This evening, we have been working with General Insurance, which is our consultant. And this has been going on for about the last 2 years, the idea or the concept of offering a health clinic for our employees. And the thought of that is twofold. Number one, it's a convenience factor for our staff. The convenience being if we can offer a clinic where they can be seen and not have to necessarily take time off. For that to happen, that's a big bonus, obviously, to our students and to our school corporation. But the second fold is the amount of savings that can be had by offering such clinic is also a big proponent of this particular project. And the project itself, again, working with Schmidt Associates, working with our team, working with our insurance consultants of making sure all the specifics that we would have within that clinic are met. The budget for this particular project would be $200,000. Since it does exceed the threshold of $150,000, that would be in line for public works, in which bids have to be submitted, in which to approve such project. I'm asking the board would approve that this evening. The clinic would actually have much like the Slicer Clinic, we have a reception area, a secured location. That secured location is, we go directly, we have a parking lot to the north side, very close to where the Slicer Clinic is. The one benefit of obviously one of these projects that we did with Boston was to be able to relocate our special education classes, our preschool classes, and our special education offices here to Boston, which then again freed up space, obviously not only for the Slicer Clinic, but also for the employee clinic. But with the board's approval this evening, you will see a timeline before you. We would submit to newspapers for the legal advertisement to meet statute as far as the public bids are concerned. We would have a pre-bid meeting on the 25th of August, a bid opening set for the 8th of September. The next board meeting, we would hopefully bring to the board bids to be approved and accepted, and so that we can move forward. And the idea of this would be that we would open up the clinic after Christmas. It's an aggressive timeline, but we do think that working with architects that would be available for us. And that would also start with a new plan year as well for our health insurance. So very excited about this. The funding for this would actually be done through our self-funded health insurance, would then allow us, again, it's an investment to then obviously lower the health insurance costs, at least keep them stable, or if not, lower them. So we are, again, very, very excited about this particular health clinic. And again, with your approval this evening, we'll go ahead and move forward with the legal advertisement and the project. So at this time, I'd ask the board approve the Laporte Employee Health Clinic project.
The board's heard Mr. Hunt's recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I
Questions?
have a couple of questions. How will we staff the clinic? Will we employ the provider that?
We will. Yeah, we're working out some details. We're not quite to the point yet as far as who the provider would be, but we are working on the details with general insurance or our insurance consultant. So yes, we would then staff.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So with the construction of the Slicer Health Clinic and adjacent a second clinic in the same space, do we feel like we have enough volume to justify the space utilization of both clinics in the same location?
Yes. And what we were trying to do was actually, we did not want to have two clinics, again, as one clinic. We were trying to separate those out. So as far as the space utilization, and yes, absolutely, we have, before Mr. Tonigal had left, we looked at a number of different programs that we wanted to offer then at the high school. And again, for the cost efficiency, the Slicer Clinic obviously being staffed because of the Health Foundation. We're able to do that, and then through our health insurance or our self-funded insurance program, being able to offer the employee health clinic. But as far as the space utilization is concerned, absolutely, we definitely have the space to do it, and we're going to be able to utilize that to its full
One last
capacity.
question.
Yeah.
With it being an employee health clinic, would it be open to anyone that's covered on the insurance plan that we fund, being self-funded? So, say you're funded, would it be you and your family that's covered on the insurance plan, or would it be just for you as the employee?
The idea would just be you as the employee. Now, remember, if you wanted to utilize the Slicer Clinic, if you had children that wanted or needed to see, but we are really kind of leaning towards that, and that could be adjusted, but we were more or less leaning towards the idea of having just our employees be able to utilize that, because again, the number of appointments that can be seen during a day, we kind of want to make sure that we're able to handle that.
I was wrong, I have one more question.
Okay.
Is telemedicine an option for the staff that are in other buildings to be able to not have to leave their primary work site to be able to be seen?
It is. We do have teledoc. We're currently using teledoc.
Perfect.
So we do use telemedicine, and that has come in quite handily, especially during the COVID-19 crisis or the pandemic. So that utilization has actually increased significantly
Yeah.
during this time, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
I got a couple.
I figured.
So will the primary purpose be like urgent care, or will it be also sort of preventative care visits, since it's really part of our,
And that would be, it's not necessarily an urgent care per se. It could be, but it really is. We're looking at the wellness factor for our employees. And again, we're going to continue to promote that. But yeah, I mean, it would be, I would say more or less along the lines of like a minute clinic, basically, that we would be able to utilize that clinic.
Yes. So, I mean, certainly it makes sense that it would reduce some cost, right, and improve healthcare overall because it's much easier
Right.
to see a provider. Does GIS have any data on that by any chance? Like whether it's, the cost savings or
Yes.
some advantages
Yeah, and I
from
can,
a health perspective?
absolutely, and I can provide that to the board. I don't have that here this evening, but absolutely. And we've done some of those cost analysis as far as that's concerned. And so we do see some significant savings. The option would obviously be, with being our own clinic, to be able to offer, such as, to promote the clinic, it would be zero copay, obviously, to promote the staff to be able to come in, so there's a cost savings there. But obviously, you had mentioned it too, Mr. Kosher, as far as looking for the wellness factor. That's something we want to continue to promote. It's not just being reactionary, but being proactive as far as our health is concerned, and then again limiting those possibilities of having to have that reactionary care if need be.
So staff-wise, are you thinking like, nurse practitioners, or have you thought about, staff-wise, what you've got in mind?
Yeah, I mean, again, that has not completely been, that is an option for us, obviously, with the nurse practitioner, but again, we have not finalized those details with general insurance yet.
Any other further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Consideration for the recommendation to approve the Kessling Campus Greenhouse Project. Mr. Hunt.
Well, projects this evening, but they're really, really good projects. We had our agriculture program had put in a request or a grant proposal to, again, the Laporte Healthcare Foundation for the construction of a greenhouse. That was a couple years ago that has happened, but because of the timing at the Kessling campus, it just did not fit for us to be able to do that last year. And so now that campus has been established, we're looking to then be able to construct a greenhouse there. This does not meet the threshold as far as public works are concerned. So what I'm looking for this evening is the approval of the project. And again, the funding source was the Laporte Healthcare Foundation. We had actually received funding for that particular project. We have it and we're ready to go and move forward. Again, working with our architect, Schmidt Associates, on the details of that. Again, we're excited for this possibility to, again, promote and increase our agriculture program within our schools. And so with your approval this evening, we would be moving forward with that, and the hopes would be that we would be done, I believe, I was thinking that it was by like November, October 31st, yes, substantial completion. But what I'm looking for to do is with your approval again, we would move forward with that project. It would be a quote, so our architects would be sending out requests for quotes on this particular project, and again, move forward, and again, have that hopefully done by October 31st date. So this evening, I just ask for your approval for the greenhouse project.
The board's heard Mr. Hunt's recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Do we know where this is going to be?
Yes, I'll jump in because I just want to say I'm smiling really big, like behind my mask, because this is like finally happening, and we're really, really excited and thankful to the Healthcare Foundation. But this would be on the site of the new addition, so let me get my bearings, but so by where Kessling Park, so you drive around now at the new, and there's kind of the green area there. So it was located so that they could go out quickly from the classroom, that students could go out to that area. Amazing, the architects did like these shade studies and could show the progression of how much sun it would get and how much shade, and just our ag teachers have all kinds of plans for what the kids will be able to grow there. I'm sure you remember, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago now, when the teachers visited another school corporation that had a greenhouse, and so we've been really planning and working toward that, and to have been able to start the ag program for our middle schoolers and intermediate kids last year, and then be able to put the greenhouse there to build that interest as they go to the high school is just, it really, like when you talk about what other districts are doing, it's really an amazing opportunity for our students, so yeah, we're really excited. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
All right, consideration for the recommendation to approve the Blue Frame Technology contract to stream Slicer football regular season home games.
All right, thank you,
Mr. Tom.
Mrs. Gillen. We're requesting permission tonight to try something new in light of what's happening with large-scale events. And right now, we have a football season that we're planning to move ahead with, but we also know that crowd capacity is being reduced under the current Executive Order 4.5. Don't know what that's going to look like come August 27th, I think is when that expires. But we've been streaming through our communications program, and this is a new model. We would still use our communications program, and Mr. Varda and the students who run the TV and radio communications, but we would be doing it in a pay-per-view like setup. So Blue Frame Technology is a production service that we would partner with. They are the IHSA Champions Network, which is Indiana's digital network that the IHSA uses for all state tournaments and that sort of thing. And so this particular option that we are wanting to join is free. They have different levels of service, and we would be joining the free one. And it would be $9.95 per event. So a user who doesn't come to the game would pay to watch the event. You could have 10 people watch it. You could have 20 people watch it, but it's $9.95 one fee, and then we would split that cost with Blue Frame Technology. We would get half of that. They would get half of that. This would allow us to offset some of the costs that we were going to lose in ticket sales at the gate. It would allow our fans to watch it from home. It's a little bit more of a professional service. They have different things with graphics they can do, and I believe that it even partners with Huddle, which is next on the list for consideration as well. But one of the concerns or questions that you may have is, well, why can't we just stream it ourselves? We are limited by our E-rate, the bandwidth and the server that we would use. We wouldn't be able to advertise on that, sell ads. In this model, because it's hosted by Blue Frame Technology, we would be able to proceed with advertising. The companies would go through Blue Frame Technology. You know, just for example, a restaurant or some type of local service could then pay to advertise, and so that money would go to them. And we aren't able to do that under our current programming with our communications program. So that gives us flexibility because it's on their bandwidth and on their server and not on ours. I'm requesting that we give this a try for this season, hoping that we have a regular football season. And again, this would be the free option. There's no annual fee for us.
Board's heard Mr. Tonigal's recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. All right, any further discussion or questions?
Mr. Tonigal, so what happens if there is no season? Like, is there any commitment, or if someone does sign up in the interim and then we do not have a season, I assume they could get a refund? I mean, this is...
There's credits, because we're not paying an annual fee, we wouldn't get anything back. But if we were to use the subscription-based one or the different levels, there's language in there about getting credits applied to your next season. So there's COVID language in the contract for that, but again, we're not paying anything upfront.
Oh, I mean, like for a subscriber or not?
Oh,
like
they would pay
individual.
per event.
Oh, right, okay.
As long as the game was on, yeah, you wouldn't, I don't think
You have to pay in advance,
ahead or
right? Okay.
anything, no.
Okay.
You pay per event, so $9.95 per event.
Okay, that's, probably because I was thinking my next question was going to be, could someone if they, can't come to games or whatever, could they buy a season and get a discount or anything like
I
that?
did not see that in
No,
our
no, okay.
offerings. Tournament games are not applicable. The IHSA does those, I believe, free of charge, so.
Yeah.
I can add too, as far as the loss of revenue, I mean, obviously, football season is a huge, huge revenue source for, obviously, not only our football program, but the number of different athletic programs that we do have. And so by the loss of that, that's what one of the biggest fears across the state is right now with the loss of athletics, what's going to happen to different athletic programs or different school corporations. So I do think that this is a creative way, especially when we don't have to pay a subscription, we don't have to pay anything up front as a school corporation to try or attempt to recoup some of those losses in revenue. So I do commend, Mr. Donegal and the athletic group and their thought and being able to present something like this.
Any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Consideration for the recommendation to approve huddle agreement. Mr. Donegal.
Thank you. Secondly, we are requesting to enter into a 2-year agreement with Huddle, which is a subscription-based performance software that we've used for quite a while. We've not used it athletic department-wide. We've used it by program. This subscription is a 2-year program that we would be able to have at all levels, all programs. And so we currently pay for just a few programs what is in the first year here right now. So this is a pretty good deal they're offering right now. It's a 2-year agreement. The second year, the price would go up to the normal price. But what we're paying right now only services a few levels and a few programs. This would allow us to service all levels and all programs. So keeping track of stats, sharing video, film with other programs. It's just very standard in any high school athletic arena across our conference and the Duneland Athletic Conference. It's how we share film. Kids can, build their own highlight show and use it for college recruiting. It's kind of endless what it does, to be honest with you. And this would allow us, again, to use it across the whole athletic department at every level.
All right, heard Mr. Donegal's recommendation. Do we have a motion? So moved. So moved. And we have a second, Mr. Arnold, then? All right. Any further discussion or questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
All right, we have no other business. Any board comment?
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay. Everybody okay here? Are we all awake? Future meetings, next meeting of the board is September 14th, 2020 at 6 PM. And I presume it's here in this as long as we can.
Yes.
Very well. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Very well. Meeting is adjourned.